Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Base Paths and Brewskis. I'm your host, Dominic Backus, and today we'll be going through episode one, kind of the introduction to what this podcast is going to look like now, in the future, and in the direction I kind of hope to take with this. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to get to share and get to, express my opinions and ideas and bounce opinions and ideas off you guys and see what you have to say about what I say. So. Let's kind of talk about what we will be doing on this podcast. Obviously, it's going to be a Brewers podcast, covering the Brewers. Once the season starts, I'm going to be kind of taking it series by series and breaking down uh, game by game in episode form. So each episode will kind of encompass a series, and I'll summarize what happened, what my takeaways were from it, and how I felt about how the series went. And we'll also be talking about, roster moves, whether that be trades, call-ups, call-downs, um, free agent signings, whatever it may be, whatever is big at the time. Like, obviously, the Corbin Burns trade. It's too bad it didn't happen in 2 weeks from now because I'd have some pretty good content. But it happened a couple weeks ago, and it's kind of where we're at with the Brewers right now. Sorry, I had to grab a little drink. Which kind of leads me to my next thing is BP. So BP will be beer of the pod, kind of like batting practice. It comes at the beginning. Each episode, I will be trying a different beer and kind of giving it my opinion, a little rating at the end. And there might be some repeat beers, but I'm going to try and get a bunch of different kinds of beers and see, what tickles my fancy the most. So we'll uh, we'll be able to kind of interact in a cool way about that because I will be, asking if you have any beers that you want to try or any that you're, a big fan of that you want to plug a little more. And I'm pretty excited. I'll try really anything beer related. As of now, I will not be drinking alcohol until Easter because of I gave up alcohol for Lent. So I'll be doing root beers until Easter, which if you have any cool root beers that you want me to try, I guess be my guest. I have a couple waiting for me down in the fridge, so a couple different brands that I'm excited to try. They're Olipop and Poppy, so it's like a healthy air quotes version of soda, which I like the other flavors, so I'm excited to see what the root beer tastes like. But anyway, that's kind of the BP of the base pats and brewskis, and it's more of the brewskis part. But that's kind of how we'll go through each episode. It's going to be pretty casual, and I'm going to be expressing my opinions, but I think it's also important to have that backed up by stats and facts. I really enjoy learning about the metrics and analytics that goes into evaluating, baseball players and teams and the status of the game. So I'm really excited to kind of get to share my opinion, but also keep a very fact-based uh, stance, I guess I'd say, on how I will be delivering my opinions. So I think that's important to remember too. And if there's ever times where I'm maybe getting too analytical or, maybe kind of just firing from the hip with some opinions, please, let me know prove me wrong if I'm wrong with stuff or always, give me feedback, critiques, whatever it may be. So it's always going to be appreciated. Um, Kind of wanted to talk a little too. There's going to be some trivia coming up in the early episodes, and then also some games like Immaculate Grids for Brewer history and players. If you have any other ideas for that as well, please let me know, and I'd love to try and work something out. But I think that's a good way that I can kind of reach out to you guys and see, if you're listening to this, what your opinion is on things or what you may have in terms of knowledge of the Brewers and the history. So I think that'll be a fun way to kind of stay in touch and get to communicate and have some back and forth. And then lastly, I kind of wanted to just touch on maybe interviews potentially in the future. I think it'd be pretty cool to interview maybe some guys who are coming up in the system, maybe some guys you haven't heard of before, some prospects, and get a one-on-one interview with them if that would ever be possible. So, I mean, if you know any of these guys, let them know that I'd like to do an interview with them. But otherwise, I'll maybe start reaching out once I kind of get this podcast a little more developed, and I think that could be a pretty cool thing to do to get that kind of insight on what it's like to be in the Brewers organization and be a minor league player and just kind of what the day to day is for them in the season and off season. I think that could be a really cool insight and something that I'm curious about learning about as well. So I'd like to kind of touch on some of the platforms I'll be on too. I obviously want to try and reach you guys any way possible if you want to listen. So uh, in terms of like some other social media accounts, I have a Twitter account at Basin Brewski. The 15 character maximum did not allow me to make it Base Bats and Brewski, so it'll just be Base and Brewski. On Instagram and TikTok, it'll be Base Pats and Brewskis, all one word. And then YouTube and Spotify will just be the title of the podcast, Base Pats and Brewskis. 1 second, I think my dog's scratching at the door. Oh, maybe not. Oh, hey, Charlotte. Come on in. So Charlotte just came to visit. She's my little beagle. I'm sure you'll get to see her on some social media posts in the future. All right, that's kind of it for today. That's kind of the introduction I wanted to do. Just, tell you a little bit about who I am, what I want to do, and leave this podcast open for feedback at all times. And I want to keep it very interactive and fun and lighthearted. And kind of wanted to just conclude by saying that I want to keep it positive. I don't think that there's much good that comes from negativity. So, oops. Um, Keeping it positive about things is gonna make it a lot easier for me to be able to touch on things that you guys want me to talk about. Obviously, there are things that aren't ideal sometimes, and that will get talked about as well, but I'd like to do it in a way that's not as, you know, demeaning to players because they're professionals at this and I'm not, and they know way more than I do and ever will probably. So I'm never gonna try and tell a professional that they're wrong. But yeah, well, thank you for listening. Um, if you want to go check me out on YouTube, Spotify, hopefully there will be some other podcast platforms as well coming in the future. But TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter or X, uh, love to see you guys reach out and get in contact. And there's no beer gone, but I am done.